My name is Elizabeth Firth, and I'm VP of Brand Partnerships at Influential. We're one of the largest influencer marketing and technology companies, and really work with influencers to help brands kind of connect to audiences that matter with custom data targeting and custom measurement as well. I'm really fortunate today to be sitting here next to Renee Edwards, that's Global Director at IBM of social media. And we're really excited just to kind of come back from the break and talk a little bit about, talk to Renee a little bit about what we're seeing and some of the changes that's happening in the social landscape and what she's doing kind of based on her experience and how to and how she's kind of navigating that on behalf of brands. Very excited because actually to talk to her because at Influential, we actually are IBM Watson partners and utilize that for influencer discovery and sourcing, both for psychographic data and other kind of affinity-based data. So it's actually really exciting that I'm here talking to you. So Renee, I'd love for you to share a little bit about kind of your experience, your professional experience, and how you've kind of gotten to your role today. Oh, I think you may have to.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Thanks, Elizabeth. So my name is Renee Edwards, and I lead our global social team at IBM. And I've been in the social space for a while now at some of the top tech, most innovative brands. I have Intel's, where I sort of started out in social, had some time at ADP and Samsung. So yeah, that's it. What was the second part of that?
That's it. That's all you need. I just wanted you to do an intro. But I'd love to talk a little bit about kind of your experience and some of the learnings that you've taken kind of from working on some of those kind of larger global enterprise brands, how you're bringing those learnings into the role that you have today with IBM.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the things in digital and social marketing, it's going to evolve, right? It's an evolution constantly. We're learning people's behaviors, different channels, different social channels, what's new, what's next, what's happening overnight, who changed an algorithm, who did what. But I truly believe since I've started working in social, it's about community still. It's going to always be, in my opinion. I think there's a foundation of connection and community that, whether it's brand or personal influencer, whatever the case may be, that you're trying to storytell and build connection in order to take some action. And so that is the foundation, I think, regardless of what brand I've been.
Mm-hmm. And then do you think that there's kind of a different approach or different way in for B2C versus B2B brands and how to kind of build that?
That's a great question. There's always sort of this B2B has to do this, B2C has to do this. And, I didn't coin this at all, but, I always say be to human, right? Like it has to be about, how are we telling human stories? And I don't think that there are certain things like what we're trying to sell may not be a massive server somewhere, I don't know, right? Versus whatever X product a retailer or consumer brand may, it's different ways of going about it. But I think, again, when you think about what you have to do, you have to educate. You have to educate on product. You have to show the value. Why is this important to me? Who am I helping to influence and drive influence in order to, via social, in order to buy the product, in order to drive business and growth and scale? And so I think there's differences, but not.
Mm-hmm. And then I think also with your experience of kind of working on brands like Intel and now IBM, I think one of the biggest challenges and things that I'm really enamored on is how do you start to build a connected kind of global social strategy for those types of brands? And, kind of how do you work with your partners along the way as well?
A lot of meetings. I think, like I said, so my role is in this global, we have to, it's a lot of understanding. You have to, I need to kind of understand what's going on in collaboration, right? I need to understand what's going on in the different markets. What do they need from me? As we sit in sort of the worldwide part of the business, how are we helping to educate them, give them best practices, tell them, give them our content, for them to scale and localize what makes sense in their market, so we're trying to sort of here's the higher level strategy that we're setting from a global perspective, but this is how you then take that and localize it within your different markets. And so on my team in particular, we do have a subgroup who are solely focused on doing just that. It is constant communication, meetings, scaling campaigns, the translation of things is always a fun one, but that is how we're staying connected. And I also have people who literally sit in markets as well to help bridge those gaps.
Yeah, and how are some of the challenges that you're navigating around that? Because as you said, there's just a massive amount of coordination to be able to get that right.
Speed.
Yeah.
I think it's always speed. You didn't tell us this, and we actually just finished this a second ago. We're doing our best over here as we work with internal stakeholders, external partners, and creative. Especially when you're launching a campaign, in order to scale that. So it's the scale, it's the speed to them in order for them to make the changes necessary that make sense, again, for their different markets. So I think the tighter the teams come together, just yesterday I sat on a call of unifying brand, social, comms, and having representation, I think, and also, hey, we care about you. We know that you're in X country, and it may seem as if we're doing all of these things and we're not thinking of you, but everything that we do has to start from a global mindset. If we aren't thinking global, we're not just talking to X US person, even though I physically sit here. Everything we have to go and lead with a global mindset.
Got it. And then are you seeing more, I think just with the rapid changes specifically in the social media space, and there's kind of so many different departments and teams actually touch social media in some way. Are you seeing kind of more silos that have been created just based on your experience, or is there now more?
We've had to break them down.
Yeah.
We've tried to break them down. I think one lesson, a crucial sort of learning that came from us, so-and-so over here wants their channel. Everybody wants X channel because I have to tell this message and this is the only way I can tell it. Not true. So I think kind of educating on how we can help, how do we, whether it's paid social, organic, how are we helping to get your content seen by not necessarily spreading our brand presence and expanding it because one person needed to send a tweet out,
And then, how do you make the decisions in terms of the content that, is truly organic versus the content that you actually are going to put kind of paid promotion behind? Yeah,
that's always this organic versus paid discussion that's going, always constant for us. And I'm in the, camp that organic is not dead. I think that both work together. Brands have to sort of think about what's your organic strategy and presence, and how does that, and vice versa, help to amplify the paid, and et cetera. So I think that for thinking about paid and partnering really, really closely with our paid media team. On my side, I'm thinking about the creative, understanding the platforms. What are the new things that we haven't done, but what are those tried and true as well? Who are we trying to reach? What are the behaviors? Really trying to understand where they are, but at the same time, understanding that is this a one-to-one from paid and organic? And it may not be. I think the strategies are different. However, they need to complement one another.
Do you have different types of kind of KPIs and goals for organic versus your paid, and are you starting to get more learnings of how they are working together?
Yeah, we're trying to. I think we start at sort of a high level of what we need to accomplish, and how we're helping to drive at a broader level our brand goals and the campaigns that we have to deliver on, and the business priorities and our sort of marching orders through social. But we're trying to sort of marry the two and figure out what are we learning, how are we, at the end of the day, we're trying to build awareness around our brand and what we do and how are we trying to maintain relevancy? So I think those two things need to work together.
Yeah. I think the one thing, especially for Intel and obviously just in your experience on the other brands that you've worked on before, there's always new news. There's various lines of business so, for example, on, IBM, you're dealing with, everything from cloud computing to AI to consultative services. What are the kind of the internal and external, factors that go into how you prioritize, the choices that you're making of how to kind of communicate on social and what you're communicating in the social space?
Everyone wants everything. and we do. My team, we have the brand presence, IBM as a brand, but then we also, to your point, hybrid cloud, AI, these have channels and presences. But we've started to form this model as we've gone into transforming the business, forming a model of getting different parts of marketing and the organization together to make these decisions. So a lot of editorial planning goes into place across the organization. So you are working with comms, social media, brand, every team coming together to understand what the priorities are. But and then ultimately that's set a little higher, of course, but how we sort of understanding monthly, daily, what's going on across the channels, what takes a priority. We're kind of looking at from above, where we've said that sustainability is a priority, so we need to make sure that that content flows through channels. But I think it's still, just because you still need to take hard looks. You need to, this is a priority, yes, but does it absolutely mean that it needs to go on social, on Twitter, on Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever? So I think you still need to kind of make those calls, and you're still, at the end of the day, understanding if the most social first and audience sort of led and driven content has to make the channel.
Mm-hmm. And then how, as a collective group, how are you making decisions in terms of what social channels that you're choosing to prioritize? and then what are the ones where you're kind of like, they're meeting a readiness assessment to test, to innovate? I just heard about that, like kind of where are you kind of wanting to create that differentiation in your strategy there?
Yeah, we are stayed on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter is where we sort of live. We launched TikTok presence last year, with an understanding of we want to reach a new generation of tech enthusiasts. Can we play here? But it was very much let's experiment. This is going to be an experiment phase for us, but at the same time, experimentation for us means channel approach, strategy, tone, and voice, personality. So it's experimenting, but with a whole lot of strategy and thought. That goes into that. And it really came because we had someone in that sort of, she loved TikTok, and it was sort of selling and pushing and educating, like, okay, let's move, let's go, and kind of understanding. But we tend to, and at IBM and other places, I tend to let's watch, let's see. We don't necessarily have to be first. You get one time to sort of kind of go out there and like now you have a presence. Now you shown to the world these massive brands that, hey, so you're being watched, and you want to make sure, again, experimentation doesn't necessarily mean sort of we're flying by the seat of our pants, but it's a lot of strategy that goes into it. And the other channels, sort of tried and true, where everybody is, I think, again, with your internal teams or your partners, even platform partners, tell me what's going on, tell me what's changing. Strategy has to, it's set, but it has to evolve. We can wake up, like I said, I keep saying, wake up in the middle of the night and someone somewhere has decided that something is changing on X platform. So I think it's for us to always understand what's going on, be on the pulse, so that we can pivot strategies if needed.
Mm-hmm. And then do you set kind of different content strategies for each channel? Because I think there's like kind of a rule of thumb, especially for global brands. You're kind of like, how do I really sweat that asset as much as
we love to take an asset
versus kind of building a really unique strategy for each of like the platforms that you
We've done both. I'm guilty. We have done both. We'll take something and spread it like peanut butter. It's not the right thing to do. It's not. I think tailoring for channel, we used to say tailor for platform, understanding, but I think you sort of have to obsess, right? Like obsess over what's happening on each platform. But, and I don't necessarily, it may be the same story, but how is that story different on TikTok versus an Instagram versus whatever platform? I think you have to take the time because we're good, or we can be good, to get in sort of this, we've been in a million meetings, this campaign, this person, it went through 100 approvals, now it's just get the thing out the door and throw it on every channel. You're doing a disservice to your brand and to your audience.
Mm-hmm. And on that too, what trends right now are you really excited about in the social space? And obviously you're kind of looking through those types of trends through a specific lens, but I'm just curious to kind of see what you're excited about.
We were talking about this, so the content that I find myself leaning in and scrolling and probably sharing is just man on the street, which is so funny because I feel like that's not anything so new or groundbreaking, but I think what is that it's the appetite, it's the behavior. It's one of my favorites. I don't know if anybody works with this or not, but I'll call it out. The opinions on my own, not of IBM, but is the salary transparency. One of my absolute favorite pieces of content and social right now, and the reasons is it's a behind the scenes, it's educating in a way, it's you are this free sort of experience and content, we'll use free, right? That you, and it's relatable, like you make that okay. It is. I love it. I love that. I watch I'm going to give me all of that content. And she recently wrote, the founder, or she recently shared on LinkedIn that this year alone they made up to like almost 900K in brand partnerships. And so there goes to show the value of, I don't know where it came from, where it started. So shout out to her, kudos to her. But things like that, like where you are literally, it just kind of shows a way in, right? It's human, it's real, it's authentic, it's in the moment. And I think for brands and how that could translate to the enterprise or the different businesses that you're in, there are things to learn about that. I may not be able to do that in my role right now, but there are things to learn about what works about that content and then how you apply that.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things, I think especially for individuals that are kind of in similar roles, is that there's always a lot of pressure to kind of chase trends, to how do you really connect with those audiences in a meaningful way through kind of what's happening, how consumers are actually utilizing certain platforms. How do you, as a company, and the benefit of actually working at IBM is you have a wealth of knowledge and data, and how are you not just maybe responding to trends or starting to kind of anticipate future trends where you want to kind of lean into as an organization?
We probably have the opposite.
Okay,
we probably have the opposite. I'm like, am I going to lose my badge if we post this today? So I think,
you can choose to skip the question if you prefer.
No, but we have tapped into them. I think it is knowing, you have to know yourself very well, know your brand, know your tone, know when to enter and when to not. I don't want to give the approval to go on something and then end up on the brand should not have entered brand who did. I don't want to go on this brand did this wrong. This brand, I want to be on the right side of that. So I think it's still understanding, because you've done a great job of understanding your audience, the data, and all of the things, right? But there's still gut in social and in marketing. It's always going to be a gut. And so our team typically, when something's happening, I've seen things and I've said, we have a great answer for this, go. And they've come to me, vice versa. So I think it's the team who's made up of strats and, data and community managers. They're watching. This is a part of their everyday. So when something happens and it's popping off. It's like, hey, do we do this? And I'm like, no, but or yes.
Yeah.
This is prime time for us. So I think even on whatever night, whenever the Netflix live, prime time for brands to, Netflix sort of leaving, then you see Blockbuster coming in, and I'm like, oh my God, social managers are somewhere like, are we going? Are we like, what are we doing? I'm Slack my team on Monday. Absolutely not something that we would enter, but those are those moments and those times. But because you understand your audience, because you understand that you have permission and space to enter that conversation and to do it well, whether it's witty or smart, or then you go and you participate in the conversation.
Yeah. And I think one of the conversations that you've entered, I think one of the, you've in the last year, you've launched kind of the biggest brand campaign in a decade for IBM. Love for you to share a little bit of kind of like the kind of the journey to kind of get to there and what's to come there.
Yeah. So Let's Create is what Elizabeth is referencing, and it was in the last. IBM is 110 plus year old company, and my role in helping to bring that to life with a lot of brilliant colleagues, it was, for social, how do we do this in a modern way? This is a 110-year-old brand that has a lot of heritage, a lot of it's constant innovation. You have to be around that long. So how do we do that though on social in a way that's fresh? And the whole purpose of Let's Create, you can tell from literally just the line, is an invitation, right? For our clients, our partners, as the world is thinking about business transformation and how you go to work, how do you impact the world. It's an invitation for us to co-create together. And one of the things that we landed on for launch day was an emoji brainstorm on Twitter. And this sounds pretty simple, honestly, but this is breaking records across LinkedIn, and we brought employees in, and employee advocacy is such a huge part for IBMers. Hashtag proud IBMer is gonna always blow things out of the water. But it would sort of like, give us 3 emojis, tweet us 3 emojis, and then in real time, we're going to give you a response of how we're going to create together. It was the most fun. I mean, you have your most senior VPs that we've sort of helped get on social and convince and get behind this moment, but also just people who wanted to participate just sort of in real time. And so I think that was just one piece of it, one piece of it, but just an example of how you can use the platforms for how people intend to use them, and in ways that we communicate. We all are probably communicating through some type of emoji. And so taking that and introducing new ways for our older and storied brand was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the ideas that are most successful on social platforms really are rooted in consumer behaviors and kind of just the simplicity associated with that. You have to
understand how we use it, and how you communicate on these platforms is not going to be, your strategies are just not going to be that different. And I think when we try to make them a little like, we got to kind of really make this harder, or think that people aren't using them, even though they're making the CTO or this IT leader, they're using an emoji, I promise you.
I know we're just about time. I have one more question, because I don't think anybody can leave the stage without mentioning AI specifically. I wish if I had $1, I'd be a rich woman by the end of this. But I'd love to kind of talk a little bit about kind of how you think of, like, what's the role of AI in social today, and how do you think that will start to change in the coming months and years?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's, again, understanding it. This is one of those we asked earlier about entering a new space. I think as much as we can understand and get educated and fast, you know, ask the right questions, get exposure, understand how different behaviors. Go look at the conversations that are online. Do social listening, like understand what people are saying, what they're doing, what they're not getting from it, what they love about it, will help to determine how we move in social and what we do. If this is one to watch and to before we kind of, so I'm excited. I don't have all the answer, but I know I'm excited to see what's going to happen for us.
Thanks so much, Renee. I wanted to turn, if anybody has questions for Renee.
We're Twitter at IBM. We're there. It was, I'm sure, like every brand in the room and not in the room, watched and was going to see what was going to happen. But we are right there. Yeah.
Thank you for running over here. Hi, I'm a fellow
Hello.
social person at Univision. My name is Leslie. So nice
Hi,
to
Leslie.
talk to you. I do love how you were talking about it's not B2B, it's B2Human, and it's all about the human connection. When you're talking about driving an action from the community, how are you evaluating your success? Like, what are you using to measure success of your campaign?
So right now we're in this space of awareness, consideration, demand for us, and we're looking at, for the awareness, you know, how are we reaching the consideration, like what engagement, et cetera. So we, depending on what asset, what we're trying to do, what's the call to action, what's sort of the purpose, is in those three buckets is where we're living. I think that, you know, even our measurement and analytics strategy was just different last year, and that was because of our priorities. So again, trying to understand organic and paid, what the goals are and how we can best, ultimately, you know, I want all of the engagement and building community and connection, but I also have to show how social is helping to impact the business positively, right? And so I think understanding that in social, I don't know, I have this experience, you know, it may not be that if it's not fit for the platform, another part of marketing can take that, right? Let us do what social needs to do and kind of measuring. And I think the one thing about measuring is how at the end of the day, you're telling that story. Even when we're in our meetings, I'm pushing, you know, what is the story here? What's the learning and how do we go pivot?
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. That was good? All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.